What's up, everyone? Welcome to Unmasked, where things are discovered, uncovered, brought to the light, and made known. I'm your host, Lamar Barrett, coming live to you from PG County, Maryland. If you're interested in finding out about the untold stories behind being a college coach, this is the show for you. Being a former assistant men's college basketball coach for 16 years, there are so many untold stories behind the scenes in the life of a college basketball coach. Now let's unmask them. Today's guest is a longtime assistant coach with a tremendous work ethic, a great talent evaluator, and a recruiter. He's a terrific teacher and great skill development coach. He's great relationship with student athletes that they have in their program and with administration, whether it's in the athletic administration or even on campus with administration. Former terrific high school coach in PG County, which I was fortunate to go against for several years when he was at Laurel High School, and we'll get into that later. And then also an author, and he's a Bronx, New York native, an adopted PG County guy, kind of similar to myself, and a guy I've been calling a friend for probably 20 years now. Always talk with each other, whether it's just to say hello, pick each other's brains, talk about different kids or anything. But a guy I've called a friend for a long time, Coutreyer. So before we bring him on, I want to talk about his bio a little bit. Keith is a 1992. He played basketball at Columbia Union College, which is now Washington Adventist University, and played well there, and ended up finishing up in 1992. And then, if you're a basketball player, you're an athlete, you probably it's not out of your system early, and so he got into coaching right away, coaching in the eighth grade team over John Nevins. Andrews Middle School, and had a chance to coach over there, which is not open now. But and then you playing against guys, competitive guy he was, and had a chance to go and work out with his good friend, Coach Mike Glick. I'm sure that name will come back up, friend of ours. And then, then he goes, he's coaching and playing basketball for a couple of years, and then he gets a chance to coach at Laurel High School as an assistant coach for 5 years. And then after Laurel, he becomes the head coach in 2000. And I know we had a few battles. He was there from 2000 to 2008 before he was convinced. I'm going to say that. I'm going to use that word from another friend of ours, Kevin Nickelberry. He decided to jump into college coaching, and he goes down to Hampton University with Nickelberry, and he's there for 1 year with Kevin Nickelberry as an assistant. And then he's under Buck Joyner, who's now the head coach at Hampton now, for 1 year. So he spent 2 years at Hampton University before coming back to the DMV and having a chance to work for Kevin Nickelberry again for 10 years. Working for him for 9 years as associate head coach at Howard University. And then he spent 2019-20, working at Howard as a special assistant to the head coach with Kenny Blakely. And then he goes back to Hampton University. Just 2020. So he spent the last year back at Hampton University working for Buck Joyner as an assistant coach again. I got to welcome to the show, man. This is like one of the funniest guys that I've known. He keeps the party going all the time. Keith Coutreyer, a good friend of mine, man. Welcome to the show.
Appreciate you, LB. Appreciate that intro. It sounds a lot more impressive than it was actually doing the stuff. So I appreciate that.
Well, look, man.
Just for the record, you beat us way more than the games were a lot closer in my mind than they were in actuality. We didn't get good until you and Billy Lanier left Oxon Hill, and you created that lane for us to jump in.
You know what's funny? It's interesting because I remember this that it was early. You were just you were kind of taking over a little bit, and we talked about it because this was another thing that people don't know. We all started the AAU program together.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? PG County Select.
PG County Select. Nobody wanted us. Nobody wanted to see us.
We had the best kids in the county. We kept them with our program, which was a great thing. Like all the high school kids from Oxon Hill, Eleanor Roosevelt, Laurel High School, Gwen Park,
yep.
And on, they stayed with each other, which was good for us. And it built. That's when those guys started, namesakes started taking off. They started going to colleges, your kids. And it was huge for PG County. That's what people, I know we did the PG County in the water, but people forget, like, that PG County Select team started a lot of stuff, and and like so. And I remember one day I think we were up at camp, and I used to always talk about the program, and I talked about Oxon Hill program, and he was like, program? I ain't no, program. And then you realize like what we were doing and how we did everything, and then you did the same thing, and like the program like went to another level. It wasn't just when me and Billy left. It was no, you was like, you know what? We're not a high school team anymore. We're programming. That's what I thought. You elevated and was terrific those last few years.
No, when we were assistants, and you just thinking of things, especially you starting off as a young high school coach. Each team in your mind is compartmentalized, and you see that team as a separate entity, and just sitting down talking to you and Billy and Glenn Ferrillo and all of those guys at those round tables at the hoop group, you started to recognize that in order to really put your school on the map, you had to connect the dots and create some continuity, and that required you thinking along those lines of programs. So we started to emulate what you guys were doing from team camp at Navy or at Radford, or, we made sure we did a team camp to guys working camp. I kept all of my guys together, and we worked camp when Glick started his camp, my guys would work. So we played every day against whether he was at Spalding or Pilati. So they created that continuity. And then we would go to the hoop group every summer. And then again, my better guys would play on Prince George's Select, and we played summer league, and we played in Vanderbrick, and we played at the Rock, and then we played in fall league at Riverdale. And so we kept that continuity going and did the same things that you guys were doing, because you steal from people when you see success. And so you recognize what you and Billy were doing at Oxon Hill, and what Glenn was doing at Roosevelt and at Gwynn Park, Steve Matthews, and then later Mike Glick. Those were the people that I wanted to emulate at Laurel and turn that into a situation where we could be one of those programs in the county that got mentioned. And, it was
definitely did that. And that definitely happened, and that was the thing. And that was something like, I was like, that's when I was really proud of that. Cause I'm like, all of us was together. Nobody was jealous of each other.
Absolutely.
We all worked together. And that was the thing about it. Like, and I joked with Curtis Malone about that. I was like, yo, I remember when the public school was just as good as the private school. Kids weren't going. Like we had, just as much, many players. And he was like, well, private school was always a little better. I said it may have been, but it was a lot closer back then. Because we had a ton of guys.
Just that one year when we had Sterling Ledbetter, you had Sweetney, Goss, Butler, you had Bird from Gwynn Park, and the Ford.
Sherrod Ford.
You had both Ford kids, and then you had Delonte and Eddie and
Delonte West and
Hill and Holland rather, and all of those guys were on the same team. And we stayed local. We played in all the Charlie Weber stuff, because that's when Charlie Weber was like, and those teams they didn't want to play us before. They didn't want to play us in pool play. It's like, no, we're not playing them because they're not on the circuit. They just got these mercenaries. And we kept our guys together. And that was the great thing, walking in the gym and having PG Select on your shirt and understanding that it was, the county, 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, all across. And Massenberg got involved. We had a couple Central kids once Mass got over there, Central Suitland. When Mass was at Suitland, Mass was another guy who was, he always had a mob. And we had Navarro and some of those other kids. And it was
huge. And I can't leave out my man Lewis Hennett, Bird Hennett.
That's what I was saying. Bird, that's the Bird I was talking about.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like those, because they were the younger kids, and they were coming up. Like, I still look at like your Laurel guys were unbelievable. Like the Division I kids you had. Not even just Division I. We're gonna talk about that because we got some games, some memories.
For sure.
Well, I'm gonna get into this. First question I always like to ask, and because I could be with you all day. We talking hoops, especially PG County hoops. But like you decided to go into college, and like you had seen it because you had dealt with it from a recruiting standpoint, talking with guys. But now you on the other side. Like there's no handbook to being a college coach, as we know. tell me about like the first day, first week, or first month after things are done with human resources and orientation. You get down to Hampton, like especially like no one gives you direction, even though you and Nickelberry had been friends forever, and he was coaching. Like, talk about like that when it's like now it's like figured out, and you got to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, well, I actually, it wasn't anything that I aspired to, right? Like I was very comfortable, content, being a high school basketball coach. Like I felt like that was my calling. I had a buddy of mine, James Simmons, who was coaching at Bowie State, who would always be like, man, you need to come to the college level. And Simmons ended up working with me down at Hampton and then coming to Howard on the women's side. So he, actually he's coaching at Fayetteville State now with Luke DeLessio. And, Simmons would always be like, man, you got to, you'd be great. I was like, I think this is right where I need to be, because for me, and again, a lot of people say this, but I'm an educator, right? So I got into this because I taught special ed for 13 years. And so I see basketball through that lens. It's an additional piece to really bring education full circle. So practice is an extension of the classroom. And for me, at the end of the day, what I wanted to do was to make sure that Black and brown boys made it to successful outcomes, because the county that I worked in primarily served Black and brown children. And so that was my whole perspective, right? Like that was what I was interested in. And so when, Nick was my guy, he was, coaching when he was at Howard, we would go to all of the games in the early 90s. And then he did the Monmouth thing and the Holy Cross thing. And we went up to Holy Cross and worked camp. And then he got Charlotte and got Clemson and all of that stuff. So you watch it from the periphery. And when Nick would come to town, we let Nick, be Big Willie like he always likes to pretend he is. And he would come with the Charlotte and the Clemson credit card. And I would bring all of the crew and we would go to all of the different spots and, let Nick talk all night long so he could look like the man. And we sitting there, because I would always, bring my coworkers who were predominantly female, and Nick loved that, right? A table full of females that he could lie to all night. And so that was really my, I didn't really have any aspiration to be a college coach on that level, because I felt like high school, I was, connected to my purpose, you know what I'm saying? And I was serving, that purpose. And then when Nick became a head coach at Hampton, we never even had a discussion about me joining his staff initially. I was like, Nick, I'm gonna help you. Because I remember I talked to Nick one day, after the whole congratulations and he was like, well, you know how Nick is. Well, Keith, the business, basketball, and I'm not sure if you're ready yet. I got to groom you. I was like, oh, Nick, I'm going to help you keep your job because I'm going to send you some players. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I'm not interested in coaching college basketball at all. I'm good at what I'm doing, and my program was growing. We were, moving forward, and I felt like we hadn't accomplished, some things that were right on the horizon for me. So I didn't even think about it. And after his second year, there, we ended up winning the league championship. We ended up being regular season champs. We ended up winning the county championship. Was extremely gratifying because I got to play against one of my mentors, and Mike Glick. He was at Gwynn Park and I was at Laurel, and we beat them in the county championship. And then we played in the regional championship and finally got over that Eleanor Roosevelt hump. So we beat Eleanor Roosevelt in the regional championship, and we actually beat Oxon Hill in the semifinal of the regional championship, but that was after y'all had gone, you and Billy. But I got to cross all three of them off of my checklist because I had a lot of payback. So in that 1 year, I got to, beat those three schools, and so it was sort of like it was very surreal. And you get to that point, and then right at the time, and we ended up losing in the state semifinal to Springbrook High School, who went on to win the state championship. And I still got a little PTSD when I say that, And but it was a great year, and Nick had a position open, and he was like, "Look, man, he had a assistant coaching carousel. He had gone through 8 different guys in 2 years, and was like, I need to bring on a guy I trust." And I had met Buck in 2006 when Nick first got the job, because Buck was a part of that initial staff. And that's when my relationship with Buck, came into play because it wasn't about those things that normally happen in relationships with coaches. Like, we always kept it family from the beginning. Like, his first recruiting trip to the DMV, he stayed at my house because I was like, look, you know, you don't gotta put that hotel money out, you know, just come through, you know, you stay at the crib, you know, that kind of thing. So that's how our relationship jumped off from there. And, you know, like you said, nobody gives you a playbook. You kind of get thrown in, and there's always some things going on at a university that you don't know about when you get there, and you kind of get into it. You know, my first week there, we're in a departmental staff meeting in the library, and, you know, you get caught up into the politics and the business of basketball right away. You know what I'm saying? You know, while we were getting ready to go on a foreign tour. And so, you know, Nick was fighting for some things on the foreign tour and kind of threw my name in there because, you know, I had, you know, we were working on the last components of your contractual stuff and all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, whoa, I want to kind of come in under the radar, and you shining this light on me in front of all of these people. And it was like, whoa, that's not really, you know, what I want to do. But, you know, you kind of, you know, get it and figure it out. And, you know, you go along, and you, like you said, you know, from day one, you know, my first day there, Buck was on vacation because he had, you know, just killed himself over the last 2 years being the guy that Nick could rely on, and we had camp. So my first day, I'm running camp, you know. Say, I don't know none of the players, I don't know none of the parents, none of the kids, and I'm running camp. You know what I'm saying? Like, Nick gonna come twice a day for lunch and at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? Make sure he get that camp store money, and at the end of the day to do his thing in front of the parents. So I'm running camp. So like you said, you just kind of get thrown in and kind of have to figure it out and rely on all of those things I learned at the hoop group and from Mike Blick with his camp, and kind of, you know, put those things and practices into play and made them a part of the Kevin Nickelberry basketball camp, you know. And so that was my, you know, baptism. My first week there, I'm running camp. So it was crazy.
Wow, that's definitely a lot. Like, usually guys don't say I'm thrown in the camp. They say other things, but that's a lot right there. I'm gonna go to the next one, is recruiting, because we all know that's the lifeline of college athletics. You got to get good players, you got to get good people, and you want to get kids with good grades, or a good student. And it doesn't always mean they have to be an A student, you know, for the most part. You just want kids, and I know at Howard the last few years, it was a little different because they kind of changed how they thought academically, but you still want to get students who care about getting a degree, who care about going to college, and you don't have to chase around making sure they go to class and stuff. So talk about your best recruiting, best and worst that you may have had recruiting story over the last, you know, 13 years or 14 years that you've been in college coaching. Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse to work for two guys who sort of cut their teeth in the business as recruiters. You know what I'm saying? Like, Nick that's the one area that he was all over, you know, in terms of he stamped recruiting. And so you had a narrow lane to sort of kind of recruit in with Nick, because, you know, that was his thing. He was gonna be the guy that, you know, closed the deals and landed the big guys. And so what I tried to do working for Nick was to get those guys who would be program guys, would be your glue guys, would be guys who wouldn't necessarily be home run hitters, but would get on base every time. You know what I'm saying? So guys we wouldn't have to worry about academically, who could meet that standard and who could help us to meet our objectives academically and contribute on the court. And so, you know, I am fortunate enough that I had great contacts from high school. I recruited Brandon Ford and Marcel Boyd from Gwynn Park, and, you know, signed both of them. And I remember, you know, at the end, both of them leaning on Glick, and in those relationships and my relationships at the hoop group, because both of those were hoop group guys. And in this business, you know, like I know you recruit relationships, right? And so that's where you start with. And so I went to the places that I was familiar with and dealt with the people who I knew I had a relationship with, who I could shoot straight and who would shoot me straight. Because that's half the battle, making sure that you got good information and that you had a good feel of how you could develop a relationship with the person. And so I was fortunate in that I got to recruit kids in my lane and who could help me in those areas. And they're both institutions that I have worked at, have been historically Black colleges and universities, so they're connected with my mission of helping Black and brown boys reach successful outcomes. And both schools have tremendous academic, reputations. And so they lined up with who I was at my core as a teacher. And what I was, able to do in recruiting was to kind of, go after those kids. I mean, some great recruiting stories, like the last guy who's actually here with me now, and it's always the last thing. Like I said, I had, Kofi Andu was a story that I'm gonna tell before I tell my last one, another PG County guy, relationship guy. We had Kofi in the bag, but Nick always wants to make us, Nick wasn't sure. And then we went up and we watched Kofi at King of Prussia, and Kofi killed. He was playing for Mid-Atlantic Select, who were PG County guys and, good relationships with. So now Nick is all on Kofi because Kofi's a dog. He defends and we need that. And so Kofi's playing in some obscure tournament way up in the mountains that we don't have to go to. And Nick is like, nah, we gotta go. We gotta go. I'm like, Nick, we good. We just saw the kid at King of Prussia and in Philly. We do not have to go up in the mountains. And so, of course, we leave late, and he got me driving in the middle of the night through some unmarked roads on the side of a mountain so we could go watch a kid who's already in the bag that we don't, but you got to make your head coach happy. And we're in this gym, and it's like us and 15 other Division III and II coaches in the gym. And so that's was like, man, I told you we ain't have to come up here. But, Kofi had a great career at Howard, and he's killing it. He's one of those kids who is actually in a PhD program now. And Kofi is, an amazing story of a perseverance and a student athlete and a kid who was academically inclined and who also had athletic ability and married to two. My last recruit was Ray Bethea, who I came down here with us, to Hampton. And Ray was funny because now Ray is at the end of it, again, Ray is in my 11th, 12th year coaching college basketball. And I'm like, again, so I'm only recruiting one or two guys because Nick got 15 dudes on his page, right? So I'm like, yeah, this is the guy I want to get. So I done gone through the summers where you got 20 guys on your page that you're trying to sell, and Nick gonna end up signing 5 dudes. So let me focus on my one guy. And so Ray was my guy that summer, and I was at Spooky Nook. I was in New Jersey at one of those Elevate Hoop events that they used to have their thing. I was at Neptune, New Jersey, went to Pennsylvania to see him in Pittsburgh at the Hoop Group event in Pittsburgh. So all I did was follow Ray around that summer. And then I ended the summer in Atlantic City following him around and raising an Atlantic City kid. So what I learned after the first tournament, because Ray had just joined the AAU team. He was on a different AAU team, and he had just joined the team he was on. And so they had been together for multiple years. So I learned that Ray's not getting into the game till 4 minutes in, and then he's gonna play the rest of the half. So I would come to the game at the 4 minute mark. Like I would see when the game started. I wouldn't walk into the gym. I wait till the 4 minute mark, and I had my Howard shit on and my Howard hat, and I'm gonna walk in. And so he saw me walk in when he checked in. And when halftime happened, I walked out. So at the start of the second half, I wasn't in the gym. When he walked back in at the 4 minute mark, I walked back in the gym. And then the second day his dad saw me do that, I look up and I see his dad got on a Howard Dad shirt. I didn't know Ray's sister went to Howard. She graduated from Howard. So I was like, oh yeah, that's it. This is the kid I'm on all summer. And, you know, it ended up working out for us, and we signed Ray, and he had had the last 5 games of the year down here. He finished really, really strong, and Buck's looking forward to having 2 great years with him. So it's just, you learn certain things as you go through this thing. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I don't want everybody in the gym to think I'm here for them as it relates to this particular kid. I want this kid, because he had multiple, you know, he had like 10, 15 schools, New Jersey schools, you know, that were like offers. You know, he wasn't like a kid that like these, and I was like, in order to beat these schools, I got to make it specifically about this kid. And so, you know, I did that, and it worked out. Me and his dad got a great relationship to this day. And again, he, you know, came down to Hampton, and, you know, because I recommended him to Hampton before I even took the job for Buck, because he, you know, was one of the kids who decided he was going to transfer after that transitional year with Coach Blakeney. Just wasn't a great fit for the kid. And I was like, look, you know, you should go play for Buck. And I called Buck and was like, look, this kid want to come down there. And this is, you know, after the year was over in the summertime and the kid's trying to figure out what he's doing, I'm like, you should go play for Buck. And this was June, you know, and then, you know, the job opened up at Hampton in August, you know, and Buck was like, look, man, you might as well come on down here with Ray, you know, and so the rest is history. Now I'm back at home, and, you know. And
awesome. Yeah. And that's great educational stuff too. So the young guys, like how you just talked about that whole recruiting process and how it works. I love all those stories. That's really good. I'm gonna ask you this, man, because we know in coaching, and you know, when you're in high school, even though you spend so much time with your kids, you know, you teaching during the day, you gonna go home at night, and most of the time you're at home every night, no matter what. In college coaching, you're working 355, 360 days out the year. That's what it seems like. Even when you're at home, man, you got to make calls to recruits. You know, you might be working on your scout report at home. You know, you go on vacation or whatever, you might be sneaking a phone call to the recruit, trying to get them on campus, you know, in August, especially when you're on vacation. Talk about what did you, and your story is going to be even different. So people might like this, especially when you went to Hampton the first time and you were away, but like, what did you have to sacrifice achieving your current level of success?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, to be honest, when Nick offered me the job, it took me a couple of days to think about it, you know, just because at that point I had been in the county for 13 years. I've been at Laurel for 13 years. I'd been in the county for 15 years, because I spent 2 years at High Point when I first came into the county. And, you know, I'm halfway to 30, you know what I'm saying? I'm halfway to 30 years, and I'm like, I don't know. And so that was an initial thing. Professionally, that sacrifice, you know, the stability and the comfort of being 15 years into your pension, you know what I'm saying? And then to have to reset, because I got into this at 40 years old. When I took the job at Hampton, I was 40. I'm 53 now, 13 years later, you know, just finished my 26-year total of coaching. But so, you know, my thought process was different than that 20, 21-year-old, 19-year-old, you know what I'm saying? I had 2 young boys. And so it was a lot to think about in terms of making that transition. And, you know, initially my thought process was you get enough experience in the MEAC and maybe you'll be able to get a CIAA head coaching job. You know, that was initially at 40 years old, what I thought my path would be, you know, that kind of thing. And so when you make that decision, you don't understand the kind of time constraints, because again, at Laurel, I was my greatest resource and I put a lot of time into it. Like, I got married and the next day I went to hoop group. Like I didn't go on my honeymoon until August of that year. Like, so you would make those kinds of sacrifices as a high school coach. Like, you know, you're the athletic trainer, you're the strength and conditioning guy, you set up the gym, you take the gym down, you work the door, make sure that, like, you do all of those things. So it's time consuming and you're your greatest resource, but it's a different thing because you have some anonymity in the process and you can kind of structure things to where there's a balance between, you know, work and home. And when you're coaching the college, And then that was 6 days of camp, you know, because you had your Sunday start, Monday through Friday, you know, Saturday afternoon, I'm thinking, okay, cool, you know, camp, you know, I drive down to Virginia Beach to have lunch with a friend, and Nick calling me up like, yo, man, where you at? You know, I'm like, yo, we just finished 6 days, 10-hour days. It was like, yo, man, this is college basketball. So right away, I got to grab my food to go and jump in the car and, you know, run back on campus, because I didn't even think about the fact that let me check and see what today is going to look like. So you learn early on that every day is not your own, and you got to kind of find those spaces in time. And for me, like I said, I had 2 small boys. My oldest, who's 16 now, was 3, and my youngest had just turned 1. And so I'm trying to get to Maryland on the weekends, or they coming down on the weekends when, you know, we got our conflicts. So if we had a day off in the middle of the week, after practice the day before our day off, I would jump in my car and drive home, spend that day with the players, and then get up early morning that next morning to drive back to campus. So I was trying to do 1 day a week. So those 2 years was, you know, very challenging. My first 2 years in it, you know, from all aspects, just from making that change at 40 years old to, you know, financially, when you working in the MEAC, you're not getting rich. These aren't the contracts that you're not making that sacrifice because of the money that was involved. I actually made less money coaching than I did teaching at that time. Like, it wasn't a equal trade-off. And so, you know, you're making all of these sacrifices to see what the higher level would look and feel like. And, you know, I've definitely had a tremendous amount of experiences and some rewarding experiences during my time coaching at both places, and some, you know, memories that I have for a lifetime. I, you know, traveled to Spain, traveled to Mexico multiple times, been to Canada multiple times, been to Hawaii a couple times, and, you know, all over the country, playing in some of the most famous arenas. But what I have also learned at the end of this journey, for me, that coaching at the highest level is not about, I'm a Division I basketball coach, I'm a Power 5 coach, I coach in the NBA. Coaching at the highest level is what you do on a day-to-day basis to affect change with your student athletes in their lives and to elevate your program. And my son, a couple years ago, made the 6th grade team with a middle school team, and I went in, they would have practices at 7 in the morning because their coach, who you probably know, Keith Blackson, was a PG County guy and a head special ed guy. He was coaching the team. So they had early morning practices because they had an hour every morning. And what I watched that year was some of the highest level coaching I'd ever seen in my life, because it's not just the discipline of his practice and that the kids knew what their objectives were. He communicated with them clearly, that they understood when they were on page and when they weren't. They understood what it meant to acquire the lessons that were being taught that day's practice. He was able to discipline them in a way that didn't demean them. And it was just some of the highest level stuff that I had seen. And this is after, 10 years of coaching college basketball. And it's not to say that I haven't seen some tremendous coaching, but it reinforced for me that coaching wasn't about what level you were at. It was what you did on a day-to-day basis. And what he was doing with those 6th, 7th, and 8th graders was every bit as impressive as what I saw when I got an opportunity to watch Gary Williams practice, what I saw when I got an opportunity to, go to the Final Fours, and you watch North Carolina and Michigan and all of those guys, because they have those open practices, and you're watching those practices. And it was a affirmation to me that that the highest level is about the day-to-day, not about the conference affiliation or the school affiliation or the level or league affiliation.
Wow, you just dropped some nuggets right there. Like that, and that's great stuff that people don't understand. Like you just said it, like high. I mean, that was the highest level. It doesn't, people think, and someone asked me that, they told me like, oh, you never made it to a Power 5 school. And you know what I said? I was like, I was happy where I was to the level I got to because I was actually coaching. When you get to that highest level, you babysit a lot of times. It's not as much coaching as you think. It's like you have to like make sure these kids are getting everything they want. It's things that you have to do that you like, yo, is this really coaching basketball? You enjoy coaching basketball. That's what you do. Not, babysit these kids a lot of times.
And even with that, not even speaking to that part of it, but just speaking to like, the realities of being at what I say when people say that to me is that, at those highest levels, you're doing less day to day with those young people to really impact their lives and how they move forward than you are at the smaller resource Division I schools, because we don't have 5 academic advisors. So I had to develop an academic engagement program that every kid who came through Howard University and prior to that Hampton University had to participate in order to supplement because our academic advisor, we had 3 advisors for 450 student athletes. So if you weren't doing those things, so I'm a part of their day-to-day academic experience in a way of supporting what our academic advisors and tutors and different people are doing and making sure that those guys it's not just a conversation, it's a day-to-day, the day-to-day process of making sure that guys are connected to. It's not just, oh, hey, how's class going? It's this, this is what's going on. This is what I know you need to do. This is where you need to be. This is the information I need to pass on to the academic advisor so that she can help you. These are the tutors that are available. Like, you have to be connected to all of those things, every aspect of travel. There's no travel agent, you're doing it all, from inception to delivery of service, right? And housing, making sure your guys are in the right dorms and all of those things. When you're at the level that you and I have coached at, that it's even more time consuming because, you have to do all of those things. You don't have all of those resources. And, as much as your focus is on basketball, you have to focus on those other things. And for me, my experience has been a little different than you. I think, the babysitting aspect is a byproduct of any level, but whereas they do more of it because they don't do a lot of these other things, that They're doing basketball and babysitting, right? Where I may see you as much, but when I see you we got a 15-minute academic engagement meeting every day. We're talking about travel letters. We're talking about dorms, issues and circumstances. We're talking about making sure you get to this meeting or making sure you get to these different things outside
of service stuff.
Outside of basketball. So you're doing all of those things. And so you touch more of their life outside of basketball. So your relationship becomes a little bigger than basketball with those kids. And it's organic. It's not, you didn't have to force your way into it because you're their support system. And, you have to know those things because there's not somebody there as a back catcher who's going to catch that in those supplemental staff positions. You just don't have that at our level,
So true. So true, man. So true. Well, it's interesting that I could ask you questions and you're giving me some answers that I don't even have to ask the questions to because the answers you're giving providing are so good. But I'm gonna ask you this because you a guy, and I say it because I've been knowing you for a long time now. You come in the gym, everybody knows when you're in, you're gonna laugh, you're gonna joke, but you come in to get your work done. Like you know who you're watching, you know who you're evaluating. That's just what it is. So I'm gonna ask you this: do you ever find that there are things about you that people might misunderstand? Like just because they see you laugh and joke, but you get your work done. Is there things that you find like people might misunderstand about you?
Probably, you know, a lot of those things sometimes I lean into. You know, like I think some guys, and again, for me, because and you get into it a little later and you have a different perspective. So my thing wasn't, I was trying to develop genuine relationships with guys, whether it was other coaches, AAU guys, high school guys. And so I was genuinely trying to be myself. I wasn't trying to be this picture of what I thought a college coach was supposed to be, walking around in the summertime with a briefcase or a laptop or some of those things. And while that works for other guys, if that's organically who you are, that wasn't me. Like, we're going to do a round table, we're going to laugh and joke. And then the next summer, that guy's going to call me about a kid because I connected with him. And so people looking at it from a distance might be like, oh, well, this guy, you know, may not be about, you know, his business and or thinking, you know, that those ancillary things mean more than you than actually what you're doing. But there's a method to the madness. And, you know, even beyond that, again, one thing that I've only been at 2 institutions, but at the 2 institutions that I've been at, my reputation outside of the program, and that's what young coaches need to understand, is that if you just focus on the basketball side of this and making connections with the people who you think can help you get that next job, then you miss the opportunity to learn how to navigate those educational communities and those university communities. And, you know, not to, you know, toot my own horn, you know, my name at Howard was an adjective. You got to go get you a Coutreyer, somebody that's going to know how to do your travel, somebody that's going to know how to do your academic support, somebody that's going to know how to get your housing documents done on time, somebody that's going to know how to do your expense reports and all of the different things that you have to do. And so people on the outside looking at it may not have, you know, my I's were dotted and my T's were crossed. You know, I'm creating my own documents, I'm creating my own way, and it would turn into, that's the way you should do it. This is how we want you to submit. Transfer that into how you do things and how you move. And it was always important for me to be thought of, be regarded well at the institution that I was at, as opposed to positioning myself to get to the next institution. And, you know, that's the reason why I was able to come back to Hampton, because when Buck said, you know, I'm gonna bring Coutreyer back, you know, many of those people I worked with from 2008 to 2010 are here, and even they're now, might have been a department head and they're a vice president now, or they're a VP of student affairs, or they're doing different things. And it was, oh my, yeah, that would be fantastic. You know, yeah, bring Coutreyer home, you know, that kind of thing. So whereas it didn't, I didn't, you know, and I didn't think about it at the time, there wasn't a connectivity to it, but, you know, where people thought, oh, you're not doing the things necessary to help you get a Power 5 job or to help you do these things, as it laid itself out, me operating in that way made it easy for me to come back to a place that I'd already been, because I was well thought of there, and because they recognized what I brought to the table, both professionally and as a person. They wanted me to come back and be a part of this community. And so that can help you as well. Yeah, you want to talk about elevating and getting to this level. But again, because coming into it at 40, I wasn't trying to make that chase and that climb to where, you know, hopefully I go here, and end up in the ACC or the SEC. It was like, I want to be well thought of and well regarded where I am, help the young people that I'm charged to serve. Because for me, leadership is service. The bedrock of leadership is service. So if you're not serving the university community, serving the basketball program, serving those student athletes, that has to be at the core of it. And when that is at the core of it, people see that. And, you know, that was the thing that allowed me to come back to Hampton University. And even in my, you know, I still have an affinity for Howard. I got my master's degree from Howard during my time there. And when I see those people there's no animosity for the, with the longtime people that were there, and they say we miss you, and we love you. You're all, you're thought of, and you're highly regarded in that community, and those people, those relationships are sustainable beyond just basketball. And so that's what's been rewarding for me, that I could, be able to come back to a place, because my daughter graduated from Howard. I had a daughter from a previous relationship, from Hampton rather. And so when I was at Hampton, my first 2 years here, she was a junior and senior at Hampton. Like, she chose in Hampton. When Nick got the job here, Hampton was actually one of her dream schools, and she came to Hampton, and I was able to, work while she was in school, and that was a tremendous blessing. So I had an affinity for, when I left Hampton, it was one of the hardest decisions of my life, because I loved it here and I loved working for Buck, and I loved being a part of this community. But when Nick got the Howard job, it was a no-brainer to go back home and to be able to, like you said, you get limited time anyway in this thing, and to be able to at least be able to start my day with the boys, and get them ready for school, and to have that morning time, because that's how I structured my day when I was at Howard, right? Like, I'm gonna come into the office a little later than our ops guy or our volunteer guys who's, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm gonna get there at 10, but I'm there till 11 o'clock at night. So I'm not gonna see my boys when they go to bed, but I'm gonna start my day with them. And that's what I was able to work out with Nick, because I'm gonna be here all day long. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be put in the 10 in the morning to 10 p.m. days, and do all of the things that you have to do that have nothing to do with basketball to make sure your kids are getting through the day, your student athletes. So it was gratifying to be able to come back to a place where you were thought of highly because of the work you put in, 10 years prior, right? And so at the end of the day, that ended up being my path to sustainability. And I didn't think about it at the time. That was just how I went about, how I was programmed and how I was wired. But that ended up being, the reason why I'm still in the business.
Awesome, man. That's awesome right there. Like you said, and you was true to yourself, which is what, don't matter what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
Your way. That's the great thing. I'm gonna ask you this, because this could be hilarious. Like you said, you've been at 2 stops, and I'm sure you have seen something. So this could be entertaining, possibly. What's the strangest or maybe weirdest thing a player has done outside of the basketball court that you just like, wow, I can't believe that kid actually did that? I mean, we don't have to say names, but like, it's just something that you like, yo, this kid really did that?
Yeah, you have to change the names and faces to protect the innocent, right? The dates. But I mean, Ed Hill tells this story all of the time. And I'll say Ed Hill, he's a Hall of Fame sports information director from Hampton University, beloved. And, we call him Huck. Those that know, you know what I'm saying? And Ed traveled with us exclusively, men's basketball, on all of our trips. And a big part of what I would do to make sure we got our study hall hours and on the road is we would conduct study halls on the bus. And I had a kid who was he was a smart kid, but he was lazy. Catholic League product, and and we on the bus, and everybody turning their progress reports, and I'm going over the progress reports. And so he had a legitimate progress report and an illegitimate progress report. And he turned in both of them. Because he thought he was turning in the illegitimate one that was like, oh, he's doing what he's supposed to, da 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 da. And so then the progress report that was legitimate had the number of classes that he was late and tardy to. So I went off on everybody else on the bus and used language that you can't use today to highlight and illustrate how lazy this dude was. And Mr. Hill tells that story to this day about, some of the conversations that he was privy to on the bus, and how, you know, he, because, you know, I would go back and forth between the educational and the real in terms of how I communicated with the guys. But it was just funny, you know, just like, man, you ain't smart enough to make sure you don't turn in the same paperwork. You know what I'm saying? It was just, it's hilarious, man. You know,
That's a hilarious one. That's like copying someone's test and putting their name on it. But I mean, wow, like, come on.
He actually went through the whole process of getting it and making sure it looked right, and finding a little friend to sign it like the teacher had signed theirs. And, you know, so I got the teacher to sign it, so I'm not gonna get in trouble, but I'm gonna do a fake one and turn it into coach and try to get my grade up before then. I'm like, because he had turned a copy of the real one into the academic advisor, but I made them give me one too, so I knew I could mirror what was going on. And I'm like, dog, you turned it, like, it was just hilarious to me, man. So it's just funny.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious. Wow. I'm gonna ask you this because I you know, with the past, and I you can do a past or present, because we all have different people that, you know, we would like to talk to. So if you had a chance to, like, you know, you got 3-4 hours to spare, you could eat lunch or dinner and have a chance to pick somebody's, you know, brain, like coaching wise, you know, whether, like I said, past or present, who would you like to talk to? Just like what made them successful? And it's not, and success is defined so many ways. I think people get that mixed up. It's not always about wins and losses, but who are 3 or 4 people you'd be like, man, I would love to sit down and talk with them and pick their brain?
I just think that, you know, even as a coach, sometimes your influences can come from, you know, non-coaches, you know what I'm saying? And in terms of, you know, how people just go about doing the amazing things, you know, that they've done. And, you know, when one of the coaches who I would love to talk to, and, you know, through the years, you would see guys from a distance and at afar that you grew up admiring, and, you know, that kind of thing. But John Chaney is a guy who, you know, just because he sort of embodied that whole, you know, teacher ethos, and, you know, also was a guy that was, obviously you coach players from all walks of life when you're at Temple, but he was committed also to making sure that Black and brown boys met with successful outcomes, that you help create the next generation of men that are going to come back into our communities and able to help move our communities forward and help make our communities more sustainable. And so he'd be a guy, you know, that I would love to talk to. And obviously, I'm sure this person is on, you know, everybody's list, but, you know, I'd love to talk to Barack Obama and have a conversation with him, not so much so about the presidency, but about his initiative, what he's doing for Black boys, and in his mentoring program, and what they're doing, and again, trying to, you know, making that his post-presidency, you know, mission. And so I'd love to talk to him about that, not so much about the political, but just about that, and, you know, why he chose that as his mission, and all of the tremendous things, you know, that they're doing in that area. And then, you know, there's some, if I had to, you know, a third person, and just because I believe that every great organization has, you know, sort of a female energy. If you want to have a great organization, you're going to have great females as a part of your organization, whether it's sports or business or social, you know, or whatever. And, you know, there's so many, you know, great examples of that. But, you know, for me, I like to talk to those women who supported great men. And I'd love to talk to Betty Shabazz and just get her perspective on, because you don't become a great man without that female energy. And, you know, whether it's your grandmother, your mother, your wife, who gives you the courage to be that. And for every great man, there's that connected through line that they had a great woman in their life. So I'd love to talk to her, and, you know, because I know that she gave him the courage to be, you know, Malcolm X, and to do a lot of the things that he did, and having her in his life. So she'd be somebody who I'd love to have a conversation with.
Those are three powerful people. Like you talking about, you know, the John Chaney piece, and why, in which, and I'm gonna ask that question. I was gonna skip it because you've talked about this a lot, and I just want to get your opinion. I want to hear what you have to say, because you've talked about education a lot, which I love. What do you try to, you know, teach / educate? Because that's what coaching is, educate. And you hit it on the head earlier when you talk about it. We always say the basketball court is like a classroom, because you always learn. What do you try to teach or educate your players besides basketball? Because you talked about all, like, you know, what's your, you know, what you like, the black and brown kids, what you want to do. But what do you try to educate them on just besides basketball?
Well, one of the components of that academic engagement program that I talked to you about, and I've used it at every place that I've been, Laurel High School, Hampton University, Howard University. I try to get young people to understand the importance of citizenship, the importance of their citizenship in the continuum. Yeah, you have, you know, athletics and you have academics, but that citizenship piece is the piece that I try to educate them on, because you have to protect your citizenship. You have to value your citizenship, and you have to understand how being a good citizen impacts you. Like, for example, as a 53-year-old man, when I get pulled over by the police, and, you know, if I get pulled over in a traffic stop, and, you know, beyond all of the things that you were taught as a black man, and all of the things that could happen possibly, what I understand is that my citizenship is intact. And when they run my name, they're going to see a driver's license with no points, no warrants, no issues whatsoever with my citizenship. Because oftentimes you're reduced to the things on that page and they don't know you. So when they see the things on that page, that's encapsulates you. They don't know that this was a mistake, or you missed a court date, or these things. So I try to get them to understand the importance of their citizenship. And that's from the greater context, right? Like how it can reduce your interactions with law enforcement and those kinds of things. But even from a context of where they are currently, your citizenship on campus, you can't just be a basketball player. You have to have a good relationship with the people at housing. You have to have a good relationship with the people who run the cafeterias, a good relationship with student services, so that, God forbid, you and the coach don't see eye to eye. You're not just reduced to what you're doing on the basketball court as far as your position on that campus. You've established yourself as a good citizen of this campus, and there are people on that campus who are willing to vouch for you and to say good things for you, and who don't just see you based on the number of points that you score or the number of wins or losses that you contribute to, right? And so when you are a good citizen, you have other advocates who, you know, will be in your corner, because your citizenship speaks for itself. When you go to class and you conduct yourself appropriately, when you move in and around that campus in social settings, and you understand that I don't want to be the guy who the RA had to deal with, or I don't want to be the guy who had to get thrown out of the party, and you protect your citizenship, then that becomes a practice that you take with you later on in life. And you understand the importance of it, of being a citizen of your academic communities, of the communities that you live in, of your work communities, and the role that citizenship plays in how people see you. You know, and so that's something that I try to impart to the student athletes that I come in contact with. And I try to teach them that. and and a lot of kids have hadn't even thought about citizenship as a concept.
Hey, that's a great. I mean, that's deep what you just said. Because I wouldn't have thought that, and I thought that covers so much stuff. That one word citizenship is huge. I mean, I'm gonna let you know I'm gonna borrow that. By the way, I actually love it. I'm gonna ask you this: biggest accomplishment you have experienced since you become a college coach? Because see, a lot of times people equate wins and losses to the biggest accomplishments, but there's so many other things that I think when you see that kid you recruited that probably wouldn't have gone to college or whatever, graduate, just so many different things. But what do you think your biggest accomplishment has been since you've been in college coaching?
Well, like I said, for me, I was fortunate again. And again, I was just learning my first 2 years at Hampton and trying to figure out how to navigate it and make those connections. And I figured it out. And then so when I got to Howard, I had a clear vision of what I could do in terms of implementing the academic engagement program and what the impact could be. And we went from a program that was not meeting its academic benchmarks in terms of graduation rate, in terms of APR, and over the 9-year period, we turned it into a situation where we had a 89.7% graduation rate for the entire time that we've been there, with kids that we inherited and kids that we brought in. There were only 2 kids and a lot of people say kids that stayed for 4 years. There are only 2 kids, period. Whether they stayed, 1 kid rather, whether they stayed for 4 years or not, who didn't graduate, that came in during the 9 years that I was there. The other kid who transferred eligible and got his degree from a CIAA school. So there was only 1 kid in the 9 years who didn't get his degree. And that's the thing that I'm most proud of, because that connects to successful outcomes, and so, that's, like I said, I had some great basketball experiences, some great things that have happened on the court, but, as the ball stops bouncing for everybody. And, you only get a certain window to be a player, and preparing you for your life after that. Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, passed away as a young man, and he had a long, historic NBA career. But he was just he was in the infancy of his post-career life and doing great things, but he prepared himself for that. And so helping those kids to prepare themselves because they're not going to have the 20-year career that Kobe Bryant had. If they're lucky, they might play 4 years, whether it's overseas or whatever. So you're gonna be on that side of the ledger longer than you're on this side of the ledger. And so that's the thing that I'm most proud of, because I can walk away from that and knowing that we put these kids in a position where they could have successful outcomes. There's still a lot of work to be done once you get that degree, but I know that for me personally, every door that opened for me since college is open because I had a college degree.
That's a big time number, man. Like you said, 89.7, you had 1 kid that didn't. And 1 kid that left and still graduated. Like that, that's huge. And like you said, you inherited issues. We will say probably inherited issues, yeah, but you changed that, and with your agenda. That's a great thing. I'm gonna ask you this. This is kind of, I get guys, I kind of stomp guys a couple of times when they ask this. What movie or TV show title, and you may not be a big movie guy or a TV show title guy, best describes your week, like your work week? What movie or TV show title best describes that?
Oh, movie or TV show title. Training Day.
What? Someone else just said that, and you probably the same reason. But I got to hear this. Go ahead.
You just got so much stuff you got to do in the day. If you watch that movie, it's bang, 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 right? And some of the outcomes are good, and some of the outcomes are bad. Something you're putting out fires here, and you're doing these things there. So it's just like, while there are some rote aspects of coaching and of your day that are, I know every day these things will happen, but there's always the, let's run over here. We got to go talk to this person, or got to get this guy. We got to, you know, you got to be ready. You got to be on your feet like Ethan Hawke was to see what's going on and how to navigate, you know, the landscape, you know? So yeah, I would say training day just right off the top.
That's a great answer. I love that. That is actually a great answer. And a lot of people they might be trying to steal that, but that's a great answer. What's your favorite word or phrase that you use? You might have taken it from your Laurel days and when you went to Hampton or even Howard, but what's your favorite word or phrase you like to use? You know, especially because coaches we can come up with something that we're talking to players about that, you know, it's interesting.
I mean, I got a few, and if you talk to Buck, he'll say, he always says to the players, I don't know what the fuck Coutreyer was talking about. Like, I got to go look that word up. Like one day we went in practice and the kid got in a fight, and he got in a fight on campus, and I'm talking to him in practice, and I'm like, so you think you're a pugilist? And Buck was like, I don't even know what that means. But you know, that's Buck's affect, right? Like he's that, you know, very very colloquial guy, and he's, you know, right in there with the players, so he laughs and jokes. But something that I would say on a regular basis, you know, like this, because, you know, I'm a big quote guy, so you use quotes and all of that stuff. But just a lot of times when you're talking to guys, I mean, like, you know, you just try to introduce things to guys, and like, you know, you've had a million pregame meals in your time coaching, right? So you're doing it. I'm the travel guy, so I'm responsible for the pregame meal. You got your pasta, your chicken, your protein, whatever. And I would always say to guys when they came in, look, this is not a smorgasbord. You're not here. And the word I would throw at them, and I would say, you're not. I said, we didn't set up this meal so that you would satiate yourself. And then they would always look at me, you know, and I'd be like, it's not. I'm not here. You know, this is a meal to get you what you need so that you can perform in this game. Right? Like the object of this meal is not for you to be satiated. And that's a word that I would just use all of the time in that setting, because that was my responsibility, you know, the pregame meal at the hotel or wherever we was at. And so you would give that speech and tell the kids, you know, you got to look out for your teammate coming behind you, make sure you make a reasonable plate, not trying to satiate yourself. And it would always freshen be like, I have no idea what coach meant by that. Right. So there was, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, yeah, that's a non-basketball word that I would throw at guys all of the time, and they'd come back and be like, okay, coach, I know what that means now, you know, that kind of thing.
Wow, I love it. Matter of fact, my wife just popped in the room, and she's an English teacher, so she started laughing at that, by the way, just to let you know that. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Man. Well, just in life, just, you know, that your shoes are clean, make sure that you're well groomed. You know, that was his, you know, he would always talk about life kinds of things with me and my brothers, you know what I'm saying? And those kinds of things. And then just talking about the value of work. My father instilled the value of work in us. When I graduated from high school, my father was like, yo, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Like I was home for 3 months before I went to college, and I'm sleeping late every day. My father, after 2 weeks, was like, yo, he said, real men don't sleep past and you know, he was like, real men don't sleep past 9 o'clock. You got to get up and you got to do something. You know, I let you sleep till 11 o'clock for 2 weeks. You got to get up. It's something that you need to be doing, figuring out your day, what college is going to look like, what school is going to look like. And even more so than the time, what he was saying to me is that, you know, you got to plan for success. Real men wake up and they think about their day and the things that they need to do and how they're going to take care of their family and how you're going to accomplish those goals. You know, in terms of basketball, like I said, I've been around a lot of great guys, but Mike Glick is probably a guy who I've had a million conversations with. And, I just remember, as I was trying to make the ascent at Laurel High School, having conversations with Mike about basketball and about, what you need to do. And, and you go with all of these different things. And, Mike was the guy who let me understand that your team is a reflection of you. And he was one of the first guys to really say that in a way where I understood what it meant. They're going to be a reflection of your weaknesses and of your then with those things that your team may be mirroring that may end up being weaknesses of theirs, and you can talk to them about how you try to combat that weakness in yourself, right? So you understand your strength and your weaknesses, because the worst lie you tell is a lie you tell to yourself. So if you don't understand your weaknesses, then if you only talk about the things that you're good at, then it's going to be hard for you to help those kids that you lead and serve. So he helped me to understand that, about myself, that I needed to be connected with the things about me that were great and the things about me that I needed to work on, and that would help me to, connect with the kids that I was trying to do the same for.
Oh man, wow, good stuff. That's great stuff, actually. You've never been a self-promoting guy. As long as I've been knowing, you've been a humble guy. I mean, you go about your business, and I hopefully you're gonna try to throw a big word at me, but I'm if you had to choose 3 adjectives to describe yourself, because you already got one named after the Coutreyer. You got one of those, but if you had 3 adjectives to describe yourself, which would you choose?
Again, because I know myself, I'm bombastic. I can, I'm gregarious, but I'm compassionate. So those are 3 words that I would use, and hopefully there's some others that hardworking and all of those things. But if I'm just like you said, just from a adjective standpoint of things that people don't always try to, I enjoy being in the mix. I enjoy when we get together, us PG County guys, and the bombast that is in the circle, and and those things. And so that's not something I shy away from. You know what I'm saying? Like
those are 3 things that I those are really good. I can tell you that. Those are 3 good ones. This is next to the last question, but what person and or event has had the most influence on your life?
When my father passed, it actually, I had a passion project when my father got diagnosed with cancer. I started to think about him and started to just think about all of the things that he did effortlessly with 3 boys. My oldest brother's 11 months older than me. My younger brother's a year and 6 months older. So we were ghetto twins. We were like stacked up on top of each other. And he had 3 boys, and, we all got through high school and college. Nobody's ever, had any run-ins with the law, and we all try to be, positive contributors to our society. And when I thought about just what an undertaking that was, because I, at that time, had my oldest Deuce, my oldest son, had, was a baby. It just, when he passed, it kind of inspired me, because it connected me with all of those just little things that you do on a day-to-day basis to kind of help move people forward. And I ended up writing a book and self-publishing, and it was really a book about the importance of parenting and mentoring. And that's really what it was about. And it was because of me reflecting on my father and his importance, and sometimes his silent examples, because my dad wasn't a big talker, you know, he wasn't but just what he did on a day-to-day basis and how he moved and how he kept us in line with a look sometimes, you know, and that kind of thing. And so, you know, his passing had a big impact on me as an adult, because prior to that, I don't know if I always was connected as a young adult in what I was doing day to day in my life, and how it impacted the people around me, and how it even was impacting how I moved ahead. And when my father passed, I started to be more intentional about my day to day, because I started to think about him and all of the things he did, you know, without any fanfare, to just help us get to, you know, our successful outcome. And so, yeah, my dad's passing was very, you know, impactful from that standpoint. You know, he was my first hero.
That's deep stuff right there. And a lot of people at the time, they don't come out and talk about it. You wrote a book about it. That's why I said I'm doing my research on it. And I saw that, and I was like, I'm definitely getting that book, because I guarantee you some stuff in there that, you know, like my father passed away, and I bet you there's some stuff that I can gain from that you, like you said, like the little small things. So that's gonna be something I'm definitely gonna. I saw it on Amazon. I'm definitely getting it, just to let you know that.
Appreciate
it. I'm gonna say this. This is the last question before we go. But knowing what you know now, and you got into this late, so, but what would you tell your young self, to prepare for as an assistant coach?
And
in college, because even though you started later, but like, I always say this to people, like, what would you tell your younger self to prepare for as an assistant coach?
It's two things. Because initially when you asked the question, I was thinking along the lines of, you know, do differently, right? And so I had an answer in my mind, you know, related to that, because there's something that you hear people say all of the time: don't mess with happy, you know, and what I mentioned earlier about learning what the highest level was really all about. And what I would tell myself, and it's, again, I've had some tremendous experiences and have loved, you know, the opportunities to be a Division I college basketball coach, but I recognized that what I was doing on a day-to-day basis when I was a high school coach probably connects more with who I am and my essence than the things you have to do on a day-to-day as a college coach. Because you have to do a lot of things as a college coach that don't connect with who you are in your essence, that connect to the business of basketball. And as a high school coach, I didn't have to make that delineation. I didn't have to, you know, connect what I was doing to the business of basketball. You know, it was always about connecting to that higher self and trying to do things in a way, even when you made mistakes and did things, when you go back to it, you say, okay, this is what I really want to do with the next player I get who's similar to that. But a lot of times in college, a lot of those things are cyclical because they're connected to the business of basketball. And so it would just be, you know, there was some times where there was some angst, and I would prepare myself for that. You know, if I had to talk to myself that, you know, some of the things that you do aren't always connected to who you want to be as your higher self. You don't want to stray away from that, but you recognize that they're, you know, and how to handle that, and how to, you know, try to mitigate those situations and circumstances before they happen or they occur, you know, because it's a part of college basketball, you know, some of the things that you have to do. But when you first get into it, like you said, you think it's going to be about doing so much more basketball stuff than you did at the high school level. And then there's some of these ancillary things that come in that now are connected to the business of basketball, you know, whether you take a kid scholarship or not, or whether you know what I'm saying? You know, just a lot of those different things that don't always connect with, you know, who you are in your essence, and that aren't necessarily good or bad. They're just necessary. You know what I'm saying? They aren't good or bad. They're just necessary. They're just a part of the business, and just being able to deal with those kinds of things, you know, early on, and not have it, you know, impact you the way, you know, early on it was tough, you know, because at Laurel, you know, and at Oxon Hill, you know, that those kids, there's sort of a, and you try not to, and there's sort of a transitional nature to college basketball that is not the same when you're dealing with those young people. You know, I'm still Coach Coutreyer, the kids that I coached at Laurel High School who see me when I'm in Prince George's County, and they're 30, 35 years old, you know what I'm saying? And they're having conversations, you know, I probably have some players as old as 40 who, you know, you know, you were able to connect with their life in a way that you're not always able to connect with as a college coach.
So true. No, that's true stuff. So I definitely understand. Now I look back, you know, we get ready to end, but like, I remember, like, I'm listening, and all the times we used to spend together, whether it was coaching with Select or up in college in New Jersey, and you always used to drop the big words, and everybody thought like you were, like, you know, playing and joking, and like, and I'm listening to you now, and I'm like, yo, his vocabulary is very extensive. Like that wasn't a joke back then, but everyone was laughing because they thought it was a joke.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, yo, your vocabulary, man, is unbelievable. Like, so I applaud you for that. I'm telling, like, but we thought you was joking back then because you know, you had everybody.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know? But no, it's serious. I'm gonna definitely say that. Well, look, man, I want to thank you again for being a guest on the show and being unmasked. Is it anything that you want to leave with the people before we go?
I just want to thank you. And you know, like I said, you are an example that I hope to follow, because for me, like I said, I just finished my 26th year, and, you know, I only see myself chasing this round ball around for another 4. I mean, that's the number in my mind. When I get to 30, I'm done. But you were a guy who put yourself in a position where you understood what that next thing was. And that's what I'm in the process of developing, you know, for myself, what that next thing is. And so you're an example for those young coaches to understand. And just like we try to get our players to understand that the ball is gonna stop bouncing one day. For me as a coach, I can't physically do this. You know, I marvel at guys who are 65, 70 and are in the gym, you know, like, you know, I tell guys in the drill, if I'm standing on this court and you bump into me, I'm gonna punch you in your face. So it's be ready for that next chapter in your life. And you're a great example of that. And, you know, I want to be like you when I grow up, LB.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, man. And, you know, like you said, like it is like, you just got to figure out what's your next step. And like, yes. I mean, and you'll know when it's time. Some people do, some people don't, but you'll know when it's time. And you know, I hope for now what you do. And I remember you showed me your program, what you were doing. This is before you had decided to stay in or not. So whatever you're doing, that program, I tell you what, I will be trying to pick your brain, or I know you're gonna be doing that. That's probably be along your next career. Yeah. So I mean, so I know people are gonna love to see that once you decide to take that to full time. So I know that. Yeah. And you know, like I said, stay tuned for the next guest as we get them unmasked. So I appreciate you viewers for seeing another great show with my friend Coutreyer. See you next time, and stay safe.